Welcome back to another episode of the Isn't That Rich podcast. In September of 2023, Farmer State Bank hosted a half-day seminar called the Legacy Sessions, featuring 4 guest speakers who are all experts in their industry, helping their clients build a lasting legacy. We recognize how beneficial the information they shared with us was, and we wanted to give our listeners the opportunity to hear what they had to say. Today, we are happy to share with you part 4 of the Legacy Sessions.
Today's presenter is a man of profound influence and inspiration whose life mission revolves around the art of leaving a lasting legacy. As a renowned senior pastor, visionary leader, and successful entrepreneur, he has dedicated his life to empowering others to discover their purpose and make a positive impact in the world.
Jason serves as senior pastor of Purpose House Church, where he provides steadfast oversight, guiding its direction and vision. Beyond his pastoral role, Jason McKinnies serves on the board at Farmer State Bank and is the CEO of FSB Insurance. Now, be prepared to be moved, motivated, and transformed as we welcome Pastor Jason McKinnies.
I'm honored and privileged today to be here and to represent such a faith-forward company and faith-forward people. And it's long been the desire of the Franks family, Farmer State Bank, FSB Insurance, and then also a personal goal of mine to make an impact on everybody's life in such a way that our legacy is in changing your legacy. Prior to my moving to Southern Illinois, I had a previous life in the corporate world for a Fortune 500 company. I was headed to Macau, China, and wound up in Marion, Illinois. Not sure how that happened, but it did. And in that, we would look for 3 different types of people that we would want to be a client for our corporation. They were those that were in trouble, those that were growing and in growth mode, and those that were having trouble in growing. The one type of people that we wanted to avoid was those who were satisfied with the status quo. They were neither hot nor cold, they were not growing, nor did they think that they were shrinking. So we looked for people who were in trouble or who were in the growth mode. Because both people who are in trouble and in growth have problems. They just may be on the different ends of the spectrum, but both of them have problems. And we wanted to be the solution to those problems. And that's what today is all about, is one, to keep you out of trouble and to keep your family and your legacy growing. I have a unique life. As pastor and as the CEO of FSB Insurance, I get to deal with, almost on a daily basis, end-of-life decisions, where people have come to a place that they never thought that they would be, and it usually happens quicker than they ever thought it would happen. I know the older I get, life seems to be very fleeting. And one of the biggest things as we come to end-of-life decisions is that people find that it is very easy to live. It is much harder to die. Even in our faith, it is easier to live for the Lord than it is in our minds to die for Him. And so we must deal with end-of-life decisions, though they may be uncomfortable. We must deal with them well ahead of time versus banking on the ability to do it when we think we will have the time. And so it is our goal, our passion was to move some people off of status quo and get you to thinking about your legacy and what life will look like when it's all said and done. And I'm sure many people would say, well, what does a pastor have to do with any of this? Well, the Bible is pretty clear. It has 500 verses on prayer, has 500 verses on faith. It has 2,000 verses on money and wealth. Jesus taught 38 parables, and out of the 38 parables, 16 of them dealt with money. So in dealing with money, wealth, and legacy, it is an important topic that we should all deal with in our lives. And how we deal with it is all a matter of perspective. A few years ago, there was a traveler who was between flights at an airport. And to kill time, she went to a lounge and she bought a small package of cookies. She sat down and she began reading a newspaper. And as she read the newspaper, she gradually became aware of a rustling noise that was happening behind her paper. She was absolutely flabbergasted that a neatly dressed man was helping himself to her cookies. She didn't want to make a scene there in the lounge, so she leaned over and she took a cookie for herself. A minute or two passed by and there became some more rustling noise, and he was having the audacity to help himself to another one of her cookies. So she grabbed another one. And this went on until they were down to the last cookie. The man then broke the cookie in two. He pushed half of the cookie across to her, and he ate the other half. This woman, by this point, is absolutely fuming. Then her flight was announced. She headed to the gate. She opened up her purse to get her ticket, and to her shock and embarrassment, there she found her pack of unopened cookies. Not only had he not been eating her cookies, she had been eating his cookies. And how we deal with things in life and the end of life and our legacy depends on who we think owns the cookies. Money in life really depends on how you deal with it, on who you think really owns it. A few years ago, I had to come to this decision in my own life. Sitting in my office, preparing for a transfer overseas, I had a small yet meaningful conversation with the Lord about my life and it not having any eternal impact. And the question was posed is what I'm investing myself in, will it show up in heaven? Everything that I'm involved in, everything that I'm a part of and where I invest my time, my money, my treasure, will that show up in heaven? Or is it just something that is fleeting and it is temporary here on this earth? And out of that, I made a decision to leave the corporate world, change complete direction of my life, and here I am today. And out of that, there was a verse found in James where it talks about life is but a vapor. It's here and it's gone. And we have to make a decision of how we want to live our life and what we want our legacy to be and begin to live out our legacy. A few years ago, just a little over 5 years ago, I had a direct collusion with that verse. In January of 2018, my father, who had been in perfect health my entire life, he had never missed a day of work. He was always the one that if you were sick, you can throw up at school, get up and go. You can throw up at church, get up and go. We were always faithful, and we learned that from our father. Perfectly healthy man, never had seen him in the hospital, never missed that day of work. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he lost his voice. Doctor's appointments later, they had diagnosed my father with sinusitis. 3 different doctors diagnosed him with sinusitis. On February the 18th of 2018, my father went into a coughing spell. Later on that day, he would tell me that he felt like he broke a rib. And then the next round of coughing caused him to pass out from the excruciating pain that he had found himself in. I jumped on a flight from Southern Illinois to South Bend, Indiana. And with the favor of God and some divine providence, I was able to get my father into a pulmonologist. From there, on February the 18th and 19th, to the early morning hours of March the 14th of the same year, we were on a journey of survival for my father. On Wednesday morning, March the 14th, in the early hours, my father, the epitome of strength and faithfulness, took one last breath here, and the next breath he was on the sunny banks of sweet deliverance. And it ended his journey here. But a grueling process began. The grueling process of tending to a man's life that he wasn't prepared to die. He wasn't prepared to die in the natural world, but yet it took place anyhow. I became the executor and the power of attorney, and now I'm the power of attorney and executor for my surviving mother. And it was an extreme whirlwind of emotions that I was just left with. As much as my father had prepared himself for the ever impending spiritual eternity, and that part of his life was secure, he never put the time or the energy or the pieces together to ensure that there would be continuity for those who were left behind. As a pastor, I have stood at the head of caskets and watched families who had come together to mourn suddenly disintegrate as soon as the funeral is over things and possessions because someone did not ensure that there would be continuity for the family that was left behind. I never dreamed that that would happen to my family, and yet it did. My family is fragmented. It is splintered. Some people never talk to each other, all because one person was not prepared in the natural to die. So I would encourage you today that you would consider both. You would consider, one, where your eternal future is at, and then number two, consider that your affairs for this life and for those that are left behind would be settled so that there would be continuity in your family. 2 weeks before the final day with my father, he asked me just a very simple question. He said, "Do you have my phone?" Of course I did. I had been answering his emails and his text messages and phone calls for the previous few days. And he said, "There are 5 documents that you'll need to send to yourself right now, should this situation not go the way that I have prayed and prepared for." That's it. That's all I had was 5 notes of passwords and logins to try to decipher a lifetime of decisions. I had no idea what spring tree meant in my dad's notes, and yet almost every login dealt with spring tree. So thankfully, my mother was alive where I could ask her, what in the world would spring tree mean? She said, "Oh, that's the street we lived on when we were first married." I was not there, and I had no idea the name of the street, so I didn't know how to log into any of his accounts, except that my mother knew. 5 notes of passwords and logins, deciphering a lifetime of decisions. Then, with the task of trying to perceive and decipher what my father would have me to do now that he was gone. Ironically, opening up the first note at the top of the first page of notes of passwords was this quote: "You never know it's the day before the day before." Why didn't he practice what he had preached? And that is absolutely the truth. You will never know it's the day before the day before. That is exactly what James was writing to us when he said, life is but a vapor. It's here and it's gone. Now, a vapor is an interesting word to use. A vapor is a gas by definition, but it can be changed depending upon the pressure that is applied to it. By the pressure applied, that vapor or that gas can be turned into a liquid, or it can be turned into something that is solid. And each of us have a decision at the moment with the pressure that's being applied to us through our daily lives and through these sessions that you've listened to today. You can allow it to be water and just allow it to slip through your fingers. Or you can take the pressure that is applied and turn that something that is very solid, not just for you, but your family that will continue on after you. It all depends on what you will do with the pressure and handling that pressure. And I know many people, because I deal with this in my day-to-day life, never want to sit down and actually have the difficult conversations. And talking about the end of our lives, what will go on beyond us, those are very difficult and uncomfortable conversations. But if we do not have them, we're forcing another generation to take the liquid of our lives and try to recatch all of that to turn it into something solid. And it's often the most difficult conversations and uncomfortable decisions that we put off for another day that are the most important that we would do today. Because you never know it's the day before the day before. So secure your future. Secure your family's future by leaning into discomfort and ensuring that your life and their life will remain solid. It's your legacy. Keep your legacy by leaning into discomfort and having those difficult conversations. Historically, the word legacy, which today has been all about legacy sessions, it's defined by something that is handed down from one period of time to another period of time, or from an ancestor or a predecessor to an inheritor. Now, in the last few years, we used to just be able to talk about legacy in terms of financial terms. I would say, though, since 2020, things have drastically changed. More often than not, 2020 is sort of our BC and AD, before the pandemic and after the pandemic. But we didn't just go through one pandemic in 2020. We absolutely went through a health pandemic. But also, over the last few years, we have went through a social pandemic, we have went through a political pandemic, and a financial pandemic. And in these pandemics, value and values are being eroded. So not only must we pass on our financial legacy, but we also must take the time to pass down our morals and our values, what we've learned and lived, and we must pass those things down to the next generation. So in that, you would make your life count, and your legacy would be that you mattered, and that then you took the time and you ensured that your family had the value that it needed and the impact of your life beyond when you're just here with them presently. Because you never know, it's the day before the day before. And sometimes we just need to teach some people and tell them, this is why we do that, this is how we do that, and this is what I want you to do, and pass down our values to our family. A few years ago, there was a family that was having a Thanksgiving dinner. And at the dinner, the mom took out a ham and a pan. And right in front of her daughter's eyes, she took a knife and she sliced the ends off of both ham and put them aside and then put the ham into the oven. The daughter said, "Mom, why do you cut the ends off of the ham?" She said, "I don't know. I just saw my mom cut the ends off the ham." So they said, "Let's go to Grandma." So they went to Grandma and they said, "Grandma, why did you cut the ends off of both of the ham, or both ends of the ham?" She said, "I don't know. I just saw my mother do it." So they went to Great Grandma and they said, "Great Grandma, why did you cut the ends off of both of the hams?" And she said, "The pan was too small." And often we don't even realize why we're doing something, but it's because of something that was passed down from one generation to the next generation. And we should ensure that the right things are being passed down to the next generation, as well as why we do it. So if you're a business owner, you're a family leader, ensure that your values, your morals, your principles are also passed down to the next generation. Very few family businesses are successful into the third generation. It's because there has not been a passing down of the sacrifice of what it took to build that business. But if we'll lean into discomfort, have the difficult conversations, and teach the next generation of what it took for you to become who you are, then they'll have a greater appreciation for what it is that you're passing down to them. May we do that very well in our lives and ensure that there is continuity for our family. A few years ago, I come across an interesting story I think sums all of this up very well. The year was 1985. I won't tell you how old I was, but I was born in 1977. In 1985, there was a quick flight that was going to happen from Tokyo, Japan to Osaka, Japan. And that quick flight became one of the world's worst aviation disasters ever to happen in the world. Just 12 minutes into the quick flight that evening, disaster began to happen. The pilots began to hear loud bursting noises coming from the rear of the plane. The rear pressure bulkhead of the Japanese airliner, which was a 747, had ruptured and taking with it part of the rear tail. And this disabled all of the hydraulic systems on the plane. Soon, the recording picked up the words of the flight engineer. A door is broken and the plane is uncontrollable. For 32 minutes, the flight crew tried to maneuver the plane into an area where they could attempt an emergency landing. Now, I don't know about you, I'm not much of a fan of flying, but can you imagine being on a plane that was uncontrollable for 32 minutes? For those 32 minutes, the plane made dives. It shook violently. It went into death spirals. And all 524 passengers were weeping and frightened beyond imagination. The vast majority of the passengers focused on the disaster that was unfolding all around them and right before their very eyes. A few passengers focused on other things. Some focused on the hopelessness of the situation, and as it began to unfold, they would document the frustration and the hopelessness of the situation. A few other passengers sat down and they pulled out notebooks and a pen and they wrote letters to their loved ones. Out of the 500 plus passengers and crew, there were only 4 survivors of the plane crash. All of them were seated in the back of the plane. And out of those 4 survivors, there were other things that survived, and they were the words that were written by those who took time to sit down and begin to write some notes. And for a few families, that's all they had, was the written letters of their loved one. And everyone else was caught up in the craziness of the environment and the moment, and their present circumstances began to overwhelm them. There was one man in particular who ignored every bit of the craziness, the chaos, and the confusion that was happening around him, and all he could focus on was what he would leave behind for his family. That was an individual that you could say was focused on his legacy. His isho, or his last words, are as follows: "To my 3 children, be good to each other and work hard. Value and help your mother. It's a sad day, and I'm sure that I'm not going to make it. I don't know the cause. It's been 5 minutes now, and I don't want to take any more airplanes." And to think that our dinner was the last time we would have dinner together. There was some sort of explosion in the cabin, the smoke, and we started to descend. Where are we going? What will happen? But I'm counting on you. It's too bad that this has happened. I love you. Goodbye. To my wife, please take good care of our children. I'm grateful for the truly happy life that I've enjoyed with you until now. That was the last words that he ever wrote. And out of that, we can take a principle. We can get caught up in all of the chaos that surrounds us in the world in which we live. The political chaos, social chaos, our cultural chaos, our economic chaos. And we can focus on what is happening in the moment right here and right now. Focus on the negativity of our day, the decline in morality in our world. We can look at all the things that are broken, try to fix them. And for sure, our world is in chaos. We are in a steep moral decline as a nation. The world seems directionless. We can focus there, or we can take a step back when everybody else is paying attention to the chaos, and we can focus on the legacy that we leave for our families. So we would need to take a moment just to sit down, and if you're so inclined, to kneel down and place the legacy of our own lives and our family ahead of all of the chaos that's going on in our world. For many people, we have a wrong definition of legacy. Most people think that legacy is what you leave behind for people. That's an inheritance. Legacy is what lives in people when we're gone. What investments have you made into them and not just for them? So you have to ask yourself a question today in all that you have heard, in securing what you will leave behind for them, their inheritance. But what are you investing in them as your legacy? What will be left behind of you and from you in the people that surround you? To create a lasting legacy, and a life that matters right now, and a life that will matter later on as well. You have to plan, you have to work, and you have to live to leave those types of things behind. Focus on the investment in them so that it is a legacy that lasts. I just want to give you 5 things that I think are important to leave in our families. Number 1 is to live out your legacy. Don't ask them or require them to live a different way than you're currently living. Live it out in front of them. Show them what is important by the life that you lead. Live your legacy. You have 2 votes in life that really matter. It's where you spend and where you attend, where you go and what you invest in. Make those choices and those votes wisely, because there is a generation coming behind you that is watching you live out your legacy. And what you put importance on, they'll find importance in. Number 2, live life like you mean it. Know what time really means. Time is our most valuable commodity. You can't buy it back. All you can do is plan in how you're going to invest it. And in that, in a world that is full of phones, social media, and email, and heads are down instead of up, we need to make ourselves less accessible to people and to make ourselves more accessible to the right people. Make yourself hard to get in touch with when you're with your family, and in time when you're investing your values and your morals. Make yourself less accessible. I consistently tell my staff at the church, you need to learn the power of a good no. You cannot do everything, and you cannot be everything to every person. Make your life count to those who matter most in your life. So live life like you mean it. Number 3, ground your purpose into a greater purpose. That was where I came to in my own personal life. Was I had a purpose. It was to grow a company, to move up the corporate ladder, to be something with accolades and trophies and stock options and all of those things. But in the end, my purpose was not attached to something that was greater than myself. And in that, when I leave this earth, whether it would be carried or I leave here in the way that I believe, I want my life to have mattered. I wanted to live beyond myself and make sure that my life matters. So I wanted to be grounded into a purpose that was greater than myself, something that lives on beyond me. So ground your purpose into something that is greater than yourself. Number 4, be generous. But don't just be generous without guidelines, because generosity without guidelines will cause you to go broke. And there are times when helping hurts. But be generous. Have overwhelming generosity. And generosity is not just money. But be generous in everything that you do and everything that you are. But have generosity with guidelines. Number 5, leave a vision and a path that's a blazed trail for others. Put your morals, your values, your purpose, your passions, your visions, and turn those into the whys, and put those whys into your family. There's a biblical question that is asked where a son gets on the lap of his father and he asks his father why he did something. And the father turns to his son and he says, "Son, it wasn't always this way. We weren't always a blessed family. We weren't always in this environment in our lives. This is how we got here. These are the things that we did that put us here. And these are the decisions that we will need to make to keep ourselves here." And I think for our lives, to put our morals and our visions and our whys of what we do and how we do it into our family. Because one day somebody will ask them, "Why do you cut the ends off the ham?" And make sure that they know and understand what it means to leave a legacy. And they say this, "We did that because Dad did that." And when they go ask Dad why he does it, he'll say, "Well, because my dad did that." And as we pass down our morals, our values, we begin to leave a lasting legacy. Because legacy isn't what you leave behind for people. Legacy is what lives in those people when you're gone. So throughout this day, and as you leave here today, May the one question be on your mind is, what will my legacy be? What will live on in those that have surrounded me and that I have been around? May my lasting legacy be in those people so that they live the life that I've lived in front of them. Thank you for this opportunity. May you leave a lasting legacy. Thank you to Farmer State Bank, to the Franks family for everything that they've done here today. And we pray that you have been blessed today, and may you have a lasting legacy. Thank you so much.
Jason is just so inspiring, and all that he had to say really moved our crowd. I think we were all very inspired to go out there and build a legacy worth leaving to the next generation. We hope you've enjoyed this 4-part series of the Legacy Sessions. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
So Jill, where do we go from here?
Be sure to check out our show notes for this episode, and also be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.